The engines hummed with the steady rhythm that travelers had come to rely on as reassurance, that soft, consistent thrum beneath their feet, reminding them that everything was normal, that they were moving, and that they were safe. For most passengers, it was just background noise. For Emily Carter, seated in 8A, it was a lullaby. Her head tilted slightly against the window, long hair falling across her cheek, the soft glow of the cabin lights brushing her face. She had been awake for nearly 40 hours before boarding, a blur of hospital corridors, signing documents, and whispering words she wished she had said years earlier. Exhaustion had finally claimed her as the plane lifted into the dark night sky, cradling her into a sleep so deep that she didn't even notice the world around her. Outside, the Atlantic stretched endlessly beneath the silver belly of the aircraft. Inside, people were beginning to shift into the odd rhythm of a long-haul flight, laptops flickering, children crying, attendants moving gracefully between rows with drinks and blankets. A group of college students murmured with excitement in row 14, a businessman furrowed his brow over spreadsheets in 10C, and in 22D, a young mother tried to rock her infant back to sleep. Everything was ordinary, perfectly ordinary, until the voice came. It crackled through the overhead speakers, polite and steady at first, the familiar tone of authority that usually announced cruising altitude or weather patterns over Greenland. But there was a tremor in it, the kind of tremor that no one ever wants to hear at 35,000 feet. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." A pause. Too long. Too deliberate. People looked up. Forks hovered in midair. Conversations hushed, even the crying infant stilled as if the air itself held its breath. "I need everyone's attention, please," the captain continued. His voice was lower now, urgent but calm, as though he was forcing each word through clenched teeth. "We are experiencing an emergency situation. Please remain in your seats, fasten your seatbelts, and follow the instructions of the crew. I will update you shortly." Gasps rippled through the cabin. The businessman in 10C muttered, "Oh God." The college students froze. A woman clutched her husband's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. But Emily slept. Her lips parted slightly, chest rising and falling in a rhythm untouched by panic. She didn't hear the murmurs, didn't feel the way the atmosphere in the cabin had shifted from routine to terror in the span of 30 seconds. She dreamed of something else entirely, a memory of her father smiling at her across a summer field, his hands waving as though she were 5 years old again. The plane shuddered, not violently, not yet, but enough to send a tray of plastic cups tumbling. A baby wailed. Passengers whispered in frantic tones, "What's happening? What's wrong?" Then the captain's voice returned, this time raw, stripped of the mask of composure. "We have suffered a severe engine failure." The words slammed into the cabin like ice water. "One of our engines is no longer operational, and the second is under critical strain. We are losing altitude faster than expected. I'm asking for your cooperation. Please stay calm." No one stayed calm. Some prayed aloud, voices breaking. Some clutched at strangers for comfort. Others sat frozen, pupils wide, unable to process the possibility that the earth below them was rushing closer with every passing minute. And through it all, Emily slept in 8A, her dreams carrying her further and further from the panic that surrounded her. The crew scrambled into motion, trained efficiency masking their own fear. Oxygen masks were readied, passengers checked, orders barked softly. The plane dipped again, and this time, even Emily stirred, her eyelids fluttering as the sudden lurch nudged her awake. She blinked groggily, lifting her head from the window. Around her, she saw faces pale with dread, hands trembling, lips moving in prayer. For a moment, confusion clouded her mind. Had she missed something? Then she noticed the way the flight attendant's hands shook as she reached for the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice filled the air once more, this time breaking on a word. We may not make it to our intended diversion airport. I need everyone to prepare. Please, hold on." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Whatever exhaustion had numbed her before was gone now, replaced by a piercing clarity. She could feel the weight of her heartbeat, thudding like a drum against her ribs. She had been running from too many things for too long, from family, from forgiveness, from herself. But here, in 8A, suspended between sky and sea, she realized with startling intensity that time was no longer hers to waste. She turned to the man beside her in 8B, his face streaked with tears. He clutched a photograph of two little girls, his hands trembling. Without thinking, Emily reached out, covering his hand with hers. Their eyes met. No words passed between them, but the message was clear: you're not alone. The cabin shuddered again. Somewhere in the back, someone screamed. Emily closed her eyes, whispering to herself words she hadn't said in years. Please, not yet. Not like this. And in the cockpit, the captain whispered the same. To be continued. The cabin was no longer quiet. It pulsed with whispered prayers, sobs, and the low rumble of fear that spread like fire in dry grass. Flight attendants moved swiftly down the aisles, fastening belts, demonstrating brace positions, trying to steady trembling hands. Their faces betrayed what their voices could not: terror. Emily sat upright in 8A now, no longer lost in sleep. Her heart pounded as she tried to process the enormity of what was happening. She had always thought that in a moment like this, she would panic, scream, or freeze. But instead, a strange calmness settled over her. Not peace. No, it was too jagged and raw for that, but clarity. She looked at the man in 8B. His photo trembled in his grasp. Emily spoke softly, her voice steady despite the chaos. Your daughters. He nodded, unable to speak. They look beautiful, Emily said. He swallowed hard. I promised I'd be there for her birthday. She turns 5 tomorrow. And now, his voice cracked, breaking into pieces. Emily squeezed his hand tighter. Then hold on to that promise. Don't let go. She'll be waiting. Her own words surprised her. She wasn't the comforting type. Not anymore. Life had carved too many scars into her, and she had withdrawn behind them. But here, with the plane trembling, with the very air vibrating with mortality, she felt something shift inside her. The captain's voice returned, quieter this time, almost intimate. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the hardest announcement I've ever had to make. We are preparing for an emergency landing. There is a chance. He stopped, inhaled audibly, then forced the words out. There is a chance we may not survive this. A chorus of sobs filled the cabin. Someone shouted, God, please. Others wept silently, clinging to one another. And Emily felt her chest tighten, not with fear of death, but with fear of unfinished life. She thought of her father in that hospital bed, his hand weak in hers. She had left before he woke up. Left without saying what she had carried for years. I forgive you. And I'm sorry. Those words had stayed stuck in her throat, and now, here at 30,000 feet, they pressed against her chest like stone. The flight attendants demonstrated the brace position again, their voices trembling as they repeated, head down, hands overhead, feet flat. The passengers mimicked them, stiff, awkward, shaking. But Emily wasn't ready to bend forward and surrender. Not yet. She leaned toward 8B. What's your name? He blinked, startled. Mark. Mark, she said, firmly. If this is it, you need to tell me one thing about your daughters. One memory. Something beautiful. Mark's eyes shimmered, but he obeyed. Last summer. Sprinklers in the backyard. They laughed so hard when I ran through with them in my work clothes. My wife said she hadn't seen me smile like that in years. Emily smiled faintly. Then hold on to that. Whatever happens, that memory doesn't die. The plane jolted again, sharper this time, and a collective cry erupted from the passengers. Overhead bins rattled. A drink cart rolled dangerously down the aisle before an attendant caught it with shaking hands. Then, silence. Not in the cabin, but in the engine. That terrible, deafening silence of absence. The second engine had failed. The nose dipped. People screamed. The captain's voice burst through again, strained and urgent. Brace. 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 The cabin filled with the chant of flight attendants, voices like drums in the chaos. Brace. 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 Emily bent forward, finally obeying, forehead pressed against the seat in front of her, arms locked. Beside her, Mark was crying openly, whispering the names of his daughters over and over like a prayer. And Emily whispered too, not her own name, not her regrets, but her father's. Dad, I forgive you. I love you. I'm sorry. The descent was brutal. The plane shuddered violently, like a bird with broken wings fighting gravity. Loose items crashed around. The sound was a monstrous symphony. metal groaning, wind howling, human voices crying out in terror. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. If this was the end, she wanted to carry one last image. Not fear, not regret, but her father's smile in that summer field, the way the sun lit his face, the way his arms opened as though he believed she could fly. There was a final lurch. A scream that tore through the cabin. And then, blackness. Dash dash dash. Emily opened her eyes to smoke. To sirens. To chaos that was somehow earthbound. The cabin was cracked, tilted, broken. But she was alive. Air burned in her lungs as she coughed violently, unbuckling her belt. People were moving, some crawling, some screaming, some terrifyingly still. Mark was beside her, dazed, bleeding from his forehead. But alive. The photograph was still clutched in his hand. "You made it," Emily whispered, grabbing his arm. His eyes widened as if just realizing it. We're alive," flight attendants shouted, guiding survivors to exits. Fire crews sprayed foam outside. The plane had crash-landed on a field, torn apart but miraculously intact enough to spare lives. Emily staggered out into the night air, her legs trembling, heart pounding. The smell of fuel and smoke filled her nose, but the sky above was endless, dark, and full of stars. She looked up, tears streaking her face. "Thank you," she whispered, "to God, to fate, to her father." She didn't know. Maybe all three. Mark stumbled out behind her, clutching the photograph to his chest, laughing and crying at once. "I'm going to see them again," he said, voice breaking. "My girls." Emily touched his arm gently, a smile trembling on her lips. "Yes, and when you do, tell them about the sprinklers." He nodded, unable to speak. And Emily knew what she had to do next. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. She would call her father, even if he never answered. Again, she would speak the words she had buried too long. The desperate announcement had shaken the world beneath her feet, had stripped everything down to its rawest truth. Life was fragile, time was a thief, and love, spoken or unspoken, was the only thing worth carrying when everything else fell away. As the survivors huddled together under blankets, sirens wailing in the distance, Emily sat in the grass of that field, still trembling but alive. She closed her eyes, inhaled the scent of earth, and whispered once more, steady this time. "I forgive you, Dad. I love you, and I'm going home."